Freeze Mage has been an archetype in Hearthstone since the earliest days of the game. As the meta shifts, and as cards lose or gain power accordingly, Freeze Mage adapts time and again to continue to be relevant. For this reason, it's an important deck for all players to understand so as to pilot it more effectively in future seasons, or to be able to play against it with a better awareness of how it succeeds. With the endless flow of mid-range shaman matchups, Freeze Mage has found another strong spot in the meta recently, holding the title of mid-range shaman's best counter. The addition of Evolved Kobold to most Freeze Mage lists has provided a more accessible win condition in many matchups. While Freeze Mage remains notorious for being one of the most complex decks in Hearthstone to play, effective pilots of the deck have found ways to win consistently on ladder against the current meta. Freeze Mage is considered a combo deck, and like most combo decks in Hearthstone, success is contingent on a game plan that is built on three key components. The first is cycle, simply drawing lots of cards. The way that Freeze Mage realizes consistency is being able to cycle most of its deck every game. In Freeze Mage, literally a third of the deck exists simply to cycle the other 2/3 consistently. Cards like Loot Hoarder and Novice Engineer can be used to cycle early in the game, and Acolyte of Pain ideally is used to cycle 2 or 3 cards, using the Mage hero power to activate 1 or more times. Oftentimes, a very strong turn 5 play in Freeze Mage is to simply drop the Acolyte of Pain and ping it with the hero power to draw 1 card. Likewise, while Blood Mage Thalnos seems tempting to reserve in the hand to combo with spells for the spell power, if there are no other options for cycling your deck, Thalnos is often used just like the Loot Hoarder. The second part of the game plan is stall, holding your opponent's threats at bay while you set up the combo. The Mage class has access to some of the best stall cards in Hearthstone. Utilizing Frost Nova, Blizzard, and Flame Strike on an opponent's board that might present a lot of damage on their turn are effective ways to delay the game. And playing a Doomsayer at its worst can soak up 7 damage from your opponent, or at its best, can achieve a full board clear if comboed with an AoE freeze. The key stall card is the Mage Secret Ice Block, which prevents you from dying for 1 turn even if you receive what would have been lethal damage. Ideally, the Freeze Mage player is seeking to stall the game long enough that the turn after the opponent pops the Ice Block, the combo is unleashed to achieve lethal and win the game. Perhaps the most tedious part of piloting Freeze Mage is understanding precisely how much stall is necessary to survive to this point. Understanding the particulars of stall and survival can make or break a player's success with Freeze Mage. The third component of the game plan is called Burn. Burn is a way to refer to the amount of damage you have left in your combo pieces that you can deal to your opponent over a set number of turns. Typically, while you stall your opponent and cycle your deck, you assemble a plan for burning your opponent down to 0, holding your ice block up as an insurance that you won't die first. The classic circumstance of victory for Freeze Mage is to play Alex Straza on turn 9 with an ice block up, then follow with 15 damage and burn on turn 10 with a Fireball, Frostbolt. However, in more recent iterations of Freeze Mage, the burn component of the strategy has become a bit more complex. As Evolved Kobold has been added to the deck, the combinations of burn that players can achieve have become much more varied. And in matchups versus classes that can constantly bring their life total back up to 30, like Paladin or Priest, the burn phase itself often turns into assembling an OTK, or 1-turn kill, with the Evolved Kobold. Playing Emperor Thorson to discount a specific set of cards can allow a Freeze Mage to play 30 damage in a single turn with, for instance, Kobold, Frostbolt, Ice Lance, Fireball. The burn phase and game plan often have to be adapted based on how much burn might need to be utilized for stall instead of for damage to the opponent hero. The balance between burn and stall is complex, very matchup dependent, and an enjoyable component of the deck for players to improve upon. Unlike many tempo and board-based decks, Freeze Mage lists do not see a lot of daily substitutions of tech cards based on the meta. This is especially true right now, as a certain list has become more or less standard because of its efficiency against the most common deck in Hearthstone, Mid-Range Shaman. However, if you're new to Freeze Mage or simply wanting to understand and enjoy some of the tech choices that have phased in and out of recent seasons, you can always adapt the stall choices and the burn choices in the deck. While 2 copies of Frost Nova is standard, some lists in recent seasons have dropped Flame Strike for additional cycle, burn, or a second ice barrier. Other lists have experimented with Cone of Cold in place of a Blizzard or an Ice Barrier. In terms of the burn options, past iterations of Freeze Mage have relied on Archmage Antonidas for the production of additional fireballs and potentially limitless burn. Others have used Malagos to combo with Frostbolts and Ice Lances for more circumstantial burst potential. Pyroblast has phased in and out of lists at times as well. As the meta shifts from its current position with the innovation of newer archetypes in other classes, Freeze Mage has the flexibility to adapt as well. Here's the thing. If you can cycle your deck, then you have a much better chance of consistently finding the cards you need when playing Freeze Mage. So ideally, you want to find your 2-drop cycle cards, Loot Hoarder, Blood Mage Thalnos, and Novice Engineer. Against slower matchups, or if you have the coin, you can keep Arcane Intellect and Acolyte of Pain. And this is especially important if you don't seem to have other options for cycle in your mulligan. Against classes that present strong early game aggro minions such as Hunter's Secret Keeper and Huffer, Tempo Mage's Mana Worm, Cult Sorcerer and Sorcerer's Apprentice, or even Shaman's Tunnel Trog, keeping a Frostbolt or a Forgotten Torch for removal, or even a Doomsayer is good as well. Don't forget, not only is Freeze Mage a deceptively complex deck to pilot, its matchups also tend to be very polarizing. Some of the best Freeze Mage players in recent seasons have boasted 80% and higher win rates against classes like Shaman, while also hoping to dodge Control Warrior and more recently Malygos Druid on the latter, as those matchups are wildly unfavored for Freeze, as bad as 20%. Recognize where Freeze Mage excels and where it is also likely to struggle, so you can hedge your bets and take confident risks in matchups where it might be appropriate to do so. The only RNG this deck possesses is the order it draws its cards. This means that you're more in the driver's seat and more in control with Freeze Mage than with perhaps any deck in the present standard meta. This makes Freeze Mage an enticing deck and also an unbelievably rewarding deck to succeed with. Good luck and have fun. Druid struggled to find its place in the meta. Was Druid's most powerful deck archetype Token Generation? Was Beast Druid the most powerful iteration? Tempo Storm believes that the Druid deck, for now,